Welcome to the bold analysis. History has shown and has proved that when people are denied their rights, they do two things. They either die suffering or die fighting for them. It's a dangerous path when people choose to fight for their rights. And that is what the leaders should understand. When those who go in the street protesting, fighting for their rights, I don't think death is something that scares them away. If Raila Odinga, the son of a Jus, is why Interior Security CS Kithure Kindiki is proposing these 10 measures on picketing, then it's true that we should stop being dismissive and just accept that we have a problem, or rather we are in a crisis to address. I want to take you through these 9 proposals. The government is planning to introduce in Parliament a subsidiary legislation in the form of regulations pursuant to the Public Order Act and the Statutory Instruments Act to provide for the legal circumscription of assemblies, demonstrations, pickets, and petitions, including but not limited to the statement in the part. You know, there is something that has been happening. All those who are arrested during Azimio protests, there is nothing. Either they've been released by police bond or presented in court, and for lack of tangible evidence, they are released. And there is nothing to be charged with. There is nothing tangible. There is nothing heinous so far for them that can be charged with. So, I think the security, the courts have realized that, or rather not the courts, but those who are managing the situation has realized that they're arresting protesters and they cannot process charge sheets. There's nothing to charge them with because actually the law allows. So what's happening here is now a legislation that is proposing this, making these 10 proposals. 1, notification procedures. The procedure of notifying the police. You know, I looked at last week when the Azimio team notified the police. They went there in public and after sending the letter, they even shared the letter in social media. That was Wajakoya, Oparanya, Jeremiah Kioni, and Eugene Wamalwa. And they shared the document in public. Number 2, Kindiki wants the duties of security agencies to protect the rights of those participating in the assembly, demonstration, picket, or petition. The duties of the security agencies. There is a thin line. Are they supposed to protect the other Kenyans that are not protesting, or they're supposed to surround or create a ring around protesters? According to me, they're supposed to create a ring around protesters. Look at what happened in South Africa. It was very peaceful. So when you create that ring around protesters, it helps to look at it keenly. Number 3 is demarcation of assembly, demonstration, picket, and petition zones. Which areas they can go and which areas they cannot go. Remember, Azimio la Umoja were talking about going to State House. And they were told, and there was very clear message that they were not allowed to go to that place because it's a protected zone. So, I don't know the case is going to be added to that list, or town CBD is going to be added into that list. 4 is the duty of public agencies and institutions to set aside a zone for persons who wish to present petitions to public authorities. Now, Parliament is supposed to create a zone for persons who wish to present petitions to public. Is it Parliament, State House, where people can go and take petitions? That one I support. Number 5, it will be the duty of organizers of assemblies, demonstrations, pickets, and petitions to provide hours, routes, and other relevant information to assist law enforcement agencies to escort them and provide them with security. I think this one is already there. Consent requirements from persons whose activities are likely to be affected by assemblers, demonstrators. Now, who is going to, before you go and protest in town, I don't know what's the criteria of government going to ask those who are around there. Of course, people's businesses will be affected. Of course, magari, here. So it's one way to engage. So how does this process come up until you then make a protest? No, a protest is not a legislation. Number 4 is limitation of the number of assemblers, demonstrators, picketers, and petitioners at any particular occasion. How are you going to limit the number? I read those 10 proposals and nilihurumia sana in Kenya. Because from what I'm seeing, I think this is a clear indication that the state, or rather leaders, are not keen on solving your problems. In fact, the leaders seems to be, instead of sitting down to listen to what exactly is the problem. The problem is not that people are protesting. The problem here is what are they protesting about? Instead of pursuing that, we are sitting in offices to come up with the legislations on how we are going to manage protesters, or how we are going through. Should we even be in a position to encourage people to protest? Why don't we solve problems that it doesn't get to the situation of protesting? Instead of getting legislation of protesting, we should have mechanisms of conflict resolution, especially on the public interest matters. For example, what we have here, we should have a situation where we create legal structures, alternative legal structures to solve this. If the public is talking about the cost of living, and the government has the numbers in the National Assembly, and so even if it is to be pushed by the opposition, it will still lack the majority, then we should have alternative. And if those alternatives are there, then they should be strengthened. So, there is one thing I can say. Instead of William Samoei Ruto addressing what Raila is talking about, Raila is talking about the cost of living, the price of unga. Raila is talking about the rampant cronyism in the national company known as the Kenyan government. Raila Odinga is talking about the IBC divide selection process that is not inclusive. Raila Odinga is talking about the runaway cost of power, and Raila Odinga is talking about election reforms, and that, according to me, is why the question of the survey is an entry point. Instead of trying to single out and speak about this, we are sitting to find legislation and create frameworks on how we can manage protesters. And I just want to ask a question. Do you know, if people come out of the streets to protest in such a really huge number, can you chase them away? You know, there's a very clear line that you can see, that containing protests will turn all this mass action to be human rights struggle. Now, that's the most challenging one here. And that's one that I think those who are advising William Ruto should tell him not to get into that, because that brings on board the civil society organizations. That brings on board the judiciary, because there are a lot of which that are going to be challenged in the courts. Some of the judges were also activists. That is going to take us through very lengthy lawsuits. So on this ground, don't make it look like I am trying to suppress the rights of the people. I don't think the mass action by Raila Odinga team is the only one that has ever happened. We've always had this mass action. Now, it is allowed in the Constitution, and there are those who have normally used it to express their anger. You know, others see, and that's why I have a problem with state machineries, operatives. They see mass action as if it is just people going to destroy the people's businesses. But there is one thing they know, but they're trying to suppress, and the other they're just putting a blind eye on it, that it is a way that the population is showing their frustration. Those who are going to the protests, and those who are turning out, they're turning out because they want to show that we are frustrated of the things that are going on. Now, the anti-government measures can escalate to 2027 as people suffer. the anti-opposition measures. If you're not going to pursue the path of let's get to the bottom line, let's get to address it, let's just find out that here, okay, Raila Odinga is a leader, and because he commands a mass following, he has created this discussion, and this is a conversation we must gonna have. Then you leave alone the issue of the political competition, because the big problem that our leaders are having is this mass action has been put in the context of a political competition. 2027 is too far. 2027 is too far. We should have a clear line. Instead of sitting down, I think Kindiki, instead of wasting all these resources, and the National Assembly have other serious things that they can do. They can pass legislations on NSSF and NHIF that are going on. They need to look at many other things. But on this one, this is not a priority. What the problem here is, I don't think Kenyans are interested in how many people are going to protest, or how many people are, or how the process is going to be put, or how the police are. No. The question here is Kenyans interested how are we going to put food on the table? And by the way, that is it. Raila Odinga is talking about Kenyans to ask questions. Why is it not possible for us to put food in the table? That's the question. If someone feels it's uncomfortable now because he's not in power, and he ought to have done it during Uhuru Kenyatta time, then that person should also give us a very clear account of what did he do when the price of unga was high and it was against Uhuru Kenyatta. Fine, Raila also kept quiet. So you by then, what did you do? Because Raila now is not in government and is now asking those questions. Now, if by then you are not with Uhuru Kenyatta, what did you do? Those who are asking that Raila never asked these questions during Uhuru Kenyatta reign. It's a very valid question. But then you, because by that time you tend to believe that you are against Uhuru Kenyatta, what did you do as a person? What did you do as a leader? That's my point. Kenyans, if laws are being passed and being created on how legislators are supposed to behave in town and how many are supposed to go in town, then I can tell you, get worried. Because they're not going to talk about the issues that Raila is putting on table.